This week is about community service, one from the south, where a man has turned his house into a book library and center, all for the love of his community. While in West Africa, a village has been transformed into a home for those forsaken or even neglected. All that coming up on World of Africa with me, Erik Njoka. Welcome, and the show starts right now. Now, a new report has put the government of Tanzanian President Suluhu Hassan on the spot. The Oakland Institute, a US-based environmental think tank, found that the authorities forcefully confiscated some 5,880 cattle and 767 goats and sheep from the Maasai community in November and December last year, and is now demanding that owners pay their heavy fines. Those failing to pay have their livestock auctioned and moved away. But why is this feud in the Serengeti taking so long to resolve? Let's find out in this World of Africa report.
Last year, the representatives from Maasai communities were up in arms after losing a land dispute against the Tanzanian government. The East Africa Court of Justice ruled that the ancestral land of the Maasais could be cordoned off for wildlife protection. The lawyers insisted that the nomadic tribe experienced forceful evictions and the land is being cleared out for safaris. The court upheld the government's arguments that growing Maasai population represented an encroachment on Tanzanian wildlife habitat.
The court has ruled against us, and it is their decision that we did not prove that this community was not living outside, but they have taken it that they were living inside the Serengeti National Park, and they've also decided that there were no forceful evictions, and there was no loss of life, there was no loss of property, and none of these people were injured during the evictions.
A conservancy in the country's biggest game reserve, the Serengeti, is at the center of the brawl between the government and Maasai communities, the NgoroNgoro Conservancy. Tanzania's government has remained adamant that relocations will pave way for safari tourism and conservation. The government argues that it will aid the country's environment and economic development. It termed the Maasai's displacement as voluntary. The government says it would suit the lives of the semi-nomadic pastoralists. But Mara Goldman, a researcher and professor at the University of Colorado, who has also worked with the Maasai, disagrees with the government's analogy.
In Loliondo, Maasai were evicted by force at gunpoint. Many were hurt. Bomos, which are the traditional sort of homesteads, were burned, and people were removed from an area that was legally registered village land. So this is not conservation area, this is village land.
Earlier, the Tanzanian government was accused of denying access to essential health services, grazing lands, water points, and salt licks to compel the Maasai to move out of the area.
The Maasai are the conservators of nature, and by disconnecting them from wildlife is a way of killing conservation and all of the ecosystems in northern Tanzania. For two reasons, right? You've got an ecosystem that was dependent on some use of the landscape by pastoralism. There's a great deal of research that shows the compatibility of pastoralism and wildlife. So one, you're changing the ecosystem by entirely removing people. On the other, you're removing people that were protecting wildlife, and you're creating people that are sort of going to be antagonistic to wildlife.
The NgoroNgoro Conservation Area is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The Maasai villages occupy a small fraction of the site within the Loliondo commune. The African Commission on Human and People's Rights is currently in Tanzania. The rights group is seeking information on the human rights situation for indigenous people in the Loliondo and NgoroNgoro areas. Several Tanzanian human rights agencies have urged the Commission to be impartial and organize confidential private hearing sessions with victims of the displacement. However, the battle over land ownership continues. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
This next story is about a 37-year-old determined to change lives of people in South Africa's largest township, Soweto. And how is he doing that? Through books. Tami Mazibuko's love for reading has forced him to turn his home into a bookstore, library and a literacy center to serve the people of his community across all generations. WION correspondent Kalden Ongmu has filed this report.
Orange brick house, perfectly built at the center of Soweto's hustle and bustle. But this is not your normal home. Stacks of books will welcome you when you arrive here, and it will lead you to the upper floor of the house that opens up into a bright space filled with books, and more books.
Soweto Book Cafe to me is a bookstore, a concept bookstore, because there's never been one like it before. Concept bookstore, it's a library for the community. It's a hub, it's a space where young people can come after school whenever they want to and chill and talk and express themselves. And so it's rare to find that space in Soweto.
Nestled in the heart of Soweto Township, Soweto Book Cafe has a little of everything for everyone. Young boys and girls, grown-ups, everyone is welcome here. Mazibuko created this space to encourage reading, especially among people of color and children who have never been exposed to the magic of books. For those who cannot afford to pay, these pages of wisdom come for very low cost. But for those who cannot, it's free.
The cost of books, it makes the people of color reluctant to read books and buy books and afford books and get into the lifestyle of reading books, because books are expensive. So people will decide, should I buy bread, should I buy food, should I buy airtime or a book? And that's why I make books accessible to my communities at a very reasonable price. Half of the price, even free. Some people I give them for free if I see the need, that the person has the need and the love for the books, and they don't have any other means to access the books. So I just provide whatever I can to assist the community.
According to nationally representative surveys, more than half of South African children do not learn to read fluently and with comprehension in any language by the end of grade 4. A staggering 29% are illiterate. A recent survey by the Paper Manufacturers Association of South Africa found that 41% of respondents own 10 books or fewer, making access to them a problem for many South Africans. PAMSA suggested improving access to books in various forms and languages, including picture books for young children. It takes time, dedication, a well-designed formula, and creative resources to instill a reading culture. But a collective effort can change the face of South Africa. For these two students, this space has done exactly that. The community cafe has opened doors into dreams of a world without limitations.
I really feel fortunate enough, and I often feel happy because I have a chance that most Sowetans could never have in their lifetime. So coming here and seeing the place was very enlightening. It was powerful in a way. It's powerful because there are a lot of books. I never knew such books existed up until I came here.
So I'm coming to this place. It's more of a mind distraction, because I come to this place to learn. I come to this place to have knowledge and meet someone who has just the same mentality as you have. Because you come to this place to grow mentally, and being outside there doing wrong things, it destroys the mind, doesn't build the mind.
In most townships in South Africa, where books are only associated with schools and not with leisure, Tami Mazibuko is trying his best to change this perception, one person at a time. This is Kalden Ongmu from Soweto, Johannesburg, for WION World is One.
In the last week of February, Africa's most populous country, Nigeria, will head to the polls to select their next president. Will any of the frontrunners, most of whom have been in the political system for decades, be able to turn the country around? Various factors may pose a challenge to the voting pattern in the West African nation. Let's start with the money. In 2022, inflation rose for 10 months in a row, just dipping to 21.3%, according to the latest figures released this month. These rising cost of living has left many families struggling to make ends meet. The economy and Naira currency are on a free fall. Unemployment is also a major problem, leaving many graduates fearful that they may not find work even after years of university study. Latest figures show that 33% of the population is unemployed, jumping to 45% for younger adults. Reducing insecurity is one of the key concerns of voters in a country which is currently experiencing a kidnapping for ransom crisis and battling a militant Islamist insurgency in parts of the north. And finally, with almost 40% of registered voters under 34 years, the vote has been called the election of young people by the elections chief, even though fears of voter apathy are still rife. So with these challenges in mind, who among the candidates does the youth see as a game changer? Let's find out in this next report by Louisa Olaniyi.
Will the 2023 Nigerian presidential election be the defining moment for the youth of the country? The latest data from the electoral body robustly confirms that the youth will have a historic role to play in these general elections barely weeks away. According to the data released by the election umpire, there are currently 93.4 million registered voters in Nigeria, out of which 37 million or 39% are young voters between 18 and 34 years of age. A little over 35% voters are between the ages of 35 and 49, while nearly 19% are elderly between 50 and 69. The rest, nearly 6%, are senior citizens aged 70 and above. But what has brought the country's youth together?
The change I'm expecting from the next president of Nigeria is to create a quality education, a good credit system, and an enabling environment for businesses to thrive. So these are the changes I expect for any sane leader to take this country to the next level?
Yes, the reason is that we all know how Nigeria is now, and we want a better Nigeria. We want a better country. We want the young people to, as we should have our own stand in this country. We all pray for peaceful election, so that's what we pray for. So we don't pray for maybe riot or any other thing, or maybe bomb blast. So we pray for peaceful election.
Imagine a 39 years old that there's no change. We just graduated from school, doing all kind of job, but this time around, I think we'll vote the right party.
Although the 2023 elections inspire a slight ray of hope due to the Electoral Act, analysts, however, differ. They say only a working and effective institution can bring about the change that young citizens seek.
The new Nigeria I want has to prioritize the youth. We have a teeming youthful population that the government has not taken cognizance to harness its full potential. So in any country that continues to neglect our youth will find itself to blame as far as the way the world is going is concerned. So I would like a Nigeria that gives precedence to the youth and that caters to the young demographic.
Because regardless of who becomes president, governor, or all the other legislative roles, how do we hold them accountable? That's now the bigger question. After the elections, after the swearing in, what will be the channels of accountability that youths will employ when necessary? Those are questions to ask and for action to take.
The youth in Nigeria are usually passive about elections earlier, as the results were mostly falsified due to a poor and faulty voting system. This year, however, it appears to be different, as the Independent National Election Commission has introduced bi-modular voter accreditation system. The Central Bank of Nigeria has also decided to redesign the naira and phase out the old currency. The central bank has also put a cap on cash withdrawals to encourage digital payments, a move that one of the top presidential contenders, Bola Ahmed Tinubu of the APC, has alleged as a ploy to sabotage his victory. But the young who were clamoring for change are happy.
With the sudden enthusiasm of young people in Nigeria towards election matters, the 2023 elections have been adjudged by political commentators as largely dominated by them. With over 75% registered young persons and middle-aged persons between 18 and 49 years old, disregarding the power they can wield might be detrimental. But how constructive can these set of people deploy their demographic power to their advantage without sacrificing it on the altar of sentiment? From Lagos, Nigeria, Louisa Olaniyi, WION, World is One.
More than 10% of new leprosy patients detected each year in Ivory Coast are children. The disease remains highly endemic in the country, and now an institute is at the forefront of the treatment of leprosy patients and neglected tropical diseases. Leprosy, also known as Hansen's disease, has haunted humanity for at least 4,000 years, often affecting the world's poorest communities. Here's a report from Abidjan about a village which is a new haven for the ostracized communities. Watch.
It is considered a neglected tropical disease by the World Health Organization and remains under research and very little discussed compared to many other illnesses. Leprosy, the so-called poor man's disease. This village, Duquesne-Cremone, in the north of Abidjan, is named after a French priest and an Italian town whose residents financed its creation, and has been a refuge since the 1960s for leprosy patients and their relatives facing social exclusion. Kamel Kouassi, the village chief, says that the patients feel at home when they are brought in here.
In fact, we feel at home here, because the Raoul Falroy Institute, where we come from, was just to treat us. But when we go back home, it's not always easy to be accepted. But when we are in the Duquesne-Cremone, we have the impression of having found a new village. But it is a village where we want to live, because we help each other, we get along, we are experiencing the same thing.
Even before the pandemic, the official numbers did not reflect the reality. This in part because the disease's incubation period can last up to 20 years. Testing and diagnosis also takes time, during which patients could potentially infect their family members.
When the disease is not detected early, complications can happen and the complications become chronic. This early onset, which will be amplified by the stigma, is what will create a depressive syndrome.
In the mid-80s, a combination of drugs, including dapsone, known as multi-drug therapy, became available. It can cure leprosy over an 11-month course, though nerve damage and other remnants of the disease remain. The Center for Immunology and Infectious Diseases in France is evaluating whether every new antibiotic developed for other illnesses could also be used for leprosy. They're also trying to find a way to simplify treatment so it can take less than 6 months. There are a couple of vaccines being developed, though they remain in early phases of human testing. Doctors at this facility always have to endure the hard bit of enlisting the patients.
Duquesne-Cremone is everything to me, and we who were born here are not necessarily of the same ethnicity. It is leprosy that brought us together, and so we are a family. And when we get together, we are very happy, unlike in my home village.
In comparison to how swiftly the world responded to COVID-19, leprosy efforts are a drop in the bucket. Scientists say that there is something everyone can do for the victims. Stop using the word leper, as it is considered discriminatory. Doctors say it's a little step that most people can do to give people affected by leprosy the dignity they deserve. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
The National Finery Museum of Rabat has finally reopened its doors to visitors after 2 years of renovations. One of the highlights of the collection is the oldest necklace in the world, the Bismoon necklace.
The Bismoon necklace is on display at the National Finery Museum in Rabat, Morocco, a building which has reopened its doors after years of renovations. The necklace, made of 32 perforated shells, was found in 2019 in the Bismoon cave near Essaouira.
The oldest piece displayed here is the Bismoon necklace, which is the oldest jewelry in the world, not only in Morocco, and it dates back 150,000 years. It was discovered in recent excavations in the Bismoon cave. Thanks to it, we can start the investigative path and learn about the development of historical jewelry.
The museum has artistic, cultural and also historical value. Before hosting exhibitions, it was a princely residence in the 17th century. The building has been a museum since 1915 and it was called Udaya Museum until 2006. The renovation works started in early 2020 and ended in late 2022. Now called National Finery Museum, the building was inaugurated in early January. In total, 8,000 objects are on display in the museum, from jewelry to costumes, bags, belts and shoes. Since its reopening, the museum has welcomed more than 11,000 daily visitors.
I see that the place is really representing the Moroccan art, especially metallurgy and kaftans, and it's a nice place, very interesting place to visit for people who want to know about the Moroccan heritage.
Rabat residents are also proud of this place and have noticed the facelift. According to a local historian, the National Finery Museum will play its part in preserving the Moroccan cultural heritage.
We cannot understand the tangible heritage without adding to it the intangible heritage that is displayed in museums. And the added value that museums provide is that it complements what the Moroccan people in general do, and Rabat in particular, for example, with regards to the city's museums. It also gives the tourist who is interested in cultural tourism a general idea of the daily life of those past centuries.
The museum also gives tourists who are interested in cultural tourism a general idea of the daily life of those past centuries. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
It's a wrap on this episode of Wild of Africa. Thank you for your time and for watching. Find us on all our social media platforms and talk to us there. We always appreciate feedback. I'm Erik Njoka. I will see you on the next show.